welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. This week I'm joined by Elliot Wise, serial entrepreneur, founder of Limitless University and owner of multiple businesses. Elliot has been all things entrepreneur since he was 13 years old, and through the course of this interview we talk about all of his experiences throughout business. There's some great gold nuggets for anyone that's looking to scale a business. Elliot is a truly inspirational entrepreneur, great guy to spend some time with, and I was lucky enough he came up to Scotland and spent a few days with us. Great guy, great episode. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. Elliot Wise, thanks for joining me this week, and thanks for braving the weather to come up to Scotland and see us.
I was actually baffled at just how different the weather is. I mean, I'm a southerner, so I'm on the south coast in Brighton.
Yeah.
Flew in, hit Scotland, it was like bang, turbulence, rain, clouds. I mean, I left sunny Brighton and got here. However, very pleasant so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive proponent for Scotland, to be honest. I spent 15 years living abroad, so, I'm still trying to readjust to the weather.
Where were you before?
I was in Azerbaijan for 5 years. I was in Texas for a few years. I used to travel with my old work quite a lot, so it was kind of Russia for 4 years as well. Weather was pretty grim there. But I think for me it's just, it is what it is. It's Scotland, it's home, and, we need to deal with it. But it was a bit sunnier the last time we seen each other in Marbella, to be fair. So thanks for coming again. The one word that immediately springs to mind when I've met Elliot Wise is serial entrepreneur. And what's more surprising about that is how young you got started. Mm-hmm. So I think it's good to go back and get a bit of the backstory of how you started, your entrepreneurial journey at such a young age. And what the drivers were and the influences around you at that time that kind of led you down that path.
So I come from I think it has to start with parents more than anything. So people think that I've come from, one, I wasn't spoon-fed. I was not born into, wasn't born into a broke family, but we were very much working class. We lived in a council house, never wanted for food or anything like that. It was like, we didn't have an abundance of money. We weren't driving around in Bentleys and Rolls Royces like a lot of people seem to think. I was always very creative and always very curious. And my parents never forced me. I have an Iranian wife now, and I've seen the culture that they've been brought up around in terms of like the pride in the family when you become a doctor, right? And there's a much more cultural pressure, I would say, in different settings, even some English families, but that would push a kid down a certain route. I was very much a parent pleaser. Yeah. So I wanted to make my parents happy. So had they indicated to me that, a certain route would be better than another, I probably would have pursued it. However, my parents were always along the lines of whatever you makes you happy. And they always let me figure out my own way, for good or for bad. And
that's pretty rare.
It's very rare, right? So, but the problem is with the wrong personality type, that can go really wrong. Okay. Because then there's no structure. There's no drive. Luckily, I was just ultra competitive. That came from, I wanted to be fucking everyone. Yeah. I always wanted to do well. I didn't know whatever it was. If it was 10-pin bowling with my friends, I would be the guy in the fucking bus on the way to the 10-pin bowling, not speaking because I was so psyched up. I'd have to figure out who was good at 10-pin bowling, psych them out before. I'm like 6,
figuring it like strategy before
that was there early on, then sports and everything else. And I realized, okay, I'm a competitive guy. But then it came to the business of making money. And at secondary school, I was blessed. I was born through the birth of the internet. We had, remember AOL dial-up. Most people watching this probably won't know what AOL dial-up is. And I was born through. I was born.
That noise still rings in my head. That old dial-up.
Your mum, Elliot, are you on the internet? Because you couldn't hang out when someone was on the internet because they keep the phone. I was born through that era, and when it wasn't even Google back then. It was like Ask Jeeves or something. Yeah. So search engines were new. And websites were new. And what I've always been good at is seeing patterns. And at that time, I realized that I wasn't doing a paper round. I wasn't doing a paper round for anyone. I didn't like manual labor. I didn't want to actually physically work to make money. Yeah. I always knew that. And I was like, this website thing, it's very new. I was like, everyone's going to need one. Everyone's going to need one. If they don't know it right now, they will.
And this was 13.
This was 13.
I mean, that just to get to that thought process at 13 years old, the fact to start with that you were thinking about money, and at that age, because I came from a similar background, very working class, and I think what inherently is driven in you at that point is you realise there are people even in your immediate community that have things that you don't have, and that it leads to this sort of feeling of you're not enough or you want more. So I get where that side of it comes from, but I still think even at 13 I wasn't as driven to the point where I thought, right, I need to get out there and make money. But that must just be something that's inherent to you, because
it was the lifestyle that I wanted. I knew that I could do it. I think I realized I didn't really have many caps on me. This has possibly come from parents, so I didn't really have many limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So I never believed that people that you see were something special. A lot of people think that. Well, they see their idols or a very successful person. They're only fucking human. That's why I ever thought that everyone's human. So if someone else can do it within reason, there's probably no reason why if I can't work my ass off, I can't do the same. And that inspired me to, that's what I said. I was like, right, okay, well, I'm going to get to this website stuff. I was a bit of a geek.
Yeah.
So I like coding and
understanding how things work.
I like to understand how things work. And I love business. As I didn't know it then, but it was the complex game of business that I really what drew me in. Mate, I bought back then, because there wasn't YouTube or anything like that. I remember I bought C++, big book, JavaScript for dummies. I was like,
so hard to learn anything back then.
It's so difficult,
think you get anything you need to know now, there's a YouTube video on it.
Do you remember a Britannica encyclopedia? Do you remember that? So like back then we didn't have Google. Like you could just type stuff in. You had to go. I remember my dad bought it. It was like 300 quid or whatever it was.
There was a series of them. You had to have quite a bit of money to be able to afford it.
It's expensive, man, to learn. So I was having to learn all this shit with books and reading how to do it. But it gave me such a competitive advantage. And that's where that came from, and built my. I asked everyone that I knew that it was mainly friends of parents of friends, family friends. Do you want a website? Do you want a website? I'll do it cheap. This, that, and the other. Ended up getting a family friend that wanted a website made for them.
Just that first step you made though at that young age, we see this time and time again between the people that succeed and don't succeed coming through our training courses. It's putting yourself out there and facing rejection is really it's difficult for an adult, but to be doing it at 13, again, it just shows you might be just wired a bit differently, or maybe it was just the views of your parents that, you don't have these limits on you.
I'm definitely wired differently.
Yeah.
I've worked with enough people now, thousands of people, to realise that I wasn't wired the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
However, the things that I was wired differently with, a lot of which can actually be taught if you've not had that same wiring.
Yeah.
There's actually patterns that you can implement and things that you can do to people that doesn't necessarily come naturally, but you can create that environment in someone's mind to be able to execute and become successful.
Yeah.
As you guys teach, it doesn't necessarily have to be born. It can be learned.
Yeah.
It might be harder, but who gives a shit? That's something I also realised as well. It's like not everyone's the best at everything.
Sure. I mean, for me, I think it all starts from self-awareness, understanding where your strengths and your weaknesses are, and then going from there. And so many people don't even take time to properly assess themselves.
Do you know what the main problem is? That's one aspect of it, but I think the biggest problem is people are fucking lazy. They go, oh, my friend loses weight easier than I do, so I'm not going to bother. Oh, my friend picked up maths faster than me, so I probably won't bother because it's harder for me.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, like if you want something in life, you've got to work for it. I realised that I was actually distinctively average at academia through school, but I'll just outwork them and I'll beat them. I didn't always grow muscle the easiest in the gym. I had mates that would just pile it on, wouldn't have to do a lot, but I'll do 3 extra hours this week then. I wasn't afraid of the work. If you want to get somewhere in life, and also that's a massive advantage, because people that have it come easy, they tend to don't have the fire.
Yeah.
But if you realise actually just got to apply yourself and stop blaming fucking everyone else for the fact that you're not where you want to be.
The victim mentality is such a hard thing to overcome with a lot of people, and you can tell instantly. It's almost a bit of a cliche, but any course we start is always going to start with mindset and trying to get people over these first hurdles, which has ultimately held them back for most of their lives to date. So if there isn't a mindset switch at the start, it's very unlikely to, you can give everybody the best strategies in the world, but if they're not relentlessly going to pursue it and put the work in, put the effort, take the knockbacks, take the stress day in, day out of things not quite going the way you want, then, it's just impossible to achieve anything significant in life.
People don't want to try hard anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I ask this to people all the time. When was the last time you tried your absolute best at something?
Yeah.
People go on about them, they're not succeeding, this and that. I'm like, did you give it everything? They didn't. Like,
no.
I mean, I must admit, I don't always give everything, my absolute everything. That's still good enough because most people are that lazy. But if you said to someone, did you truly pull out all the stops? Did you give it everything? Did you do everything you possibly could to make this thing work?
They've not done it.
So, and on that, I urge anyone to just, next time they try to pick something up, at least for themselves, give it everything.
Yeah.
Give it 100%, like properly go for it. And you'll be truly amazed at just how far you go.
It's, for me, it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue as the world develops. We live in this world with instant dopamine hits. If you're bored, you can stick on Netflix. If you need a bit of self-fulfillment, you can stick something out on social media and get an instant dopamine hit. It's so easy for people to live their lives without really ever understanding what they're capable of, That's why, I always love listening to David Goggins, and although he's an extreme motherfucker, but, just understanding the potential of the human body is just incredible. Most people will never have any clue about what they can achieve because they'll never put themselves out of discomfort. It's really easy to live life comfortably and achieve very little in life, so it's sad to see, but unfortunately, the way the world's going, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, and we'll get into that, AI may solve even more of our problems going forward, and literally you could be sitting on an island doing fuck all most of your life. Yet to see how that's going to go, but it's a real risk for a lot of people, and certainly when we talk about wealth creation and building wealth, most people just won't make the sacrifices they need to get to where they want to do, So kind of went a little bit off track there.
Apologies.
But you are, no, that's cool. That's all really good stuff. But, you're 13 years old. You've started building websites. You put yourself out there. You've got, presumably some customers on board. Mm-hmm. You've figured out how to do it through the archaic system of encyclopedias and the burgeoning web. What's next?
E-commerce.
Yeah.
So I learned how to build websites. I learned how to build, basically, they'll glorify catalogs. That I was basically uploading people's business cards for their businesses, which was great. And I was getting, I think, anywhere between £300 and £500 a website, and I had a few clients a month. And, for a 15-year-old, I was making good money. It was good. I had an accountant. I was, in my mind, I was doing really well. Then e-commerce became a thing, online shopping. For those that don't know what that is the physically buying something online and having it sent out. So I started studying that. And it was actually a contact of my dad's who was in lighting. And he, through my dad, messaged me saying, look, I can get hold of lighting. You can build shops, which I hadn't actually built one at that point.
Yeah.
Let's partner up. I get the best prices. Let's sell. So I don't know anything about lighting, but it doesn't matter. Let's give it a fucking go. I bought Google AdWords for Dummies. Mm-hmm. I went out. I had a girlfriend at the time. I think this was when I was 16. I flew us out to Egypt and I read Google AdWords for Dummies for the entire week at the side of the pool. I didn't spend any time with her. That didn't last, that relationship. Wow. I spent the entire time learning Google AdWords for Dummies. I had to scribble down this, that, and the other. Came back, I was like, right. Spent prior to that was at the end of summer holidays. That summer holidays was the transition between secondary school and sixth form college.
Yeah.
And I spent an entire summer uploading catalogs. I had a pile of catalogs like this because they didn't have CDs back then. It wasn't CSVs and images. They get a little disc of product images and then catalogs with just like one line of description.
Yeah.
No prices. I had to work those out. I had to upload every single one. There was about 5,000 products. I manually, from these catalogs, typed them in, rewrote the descriptions, uploaded the attributes, drop downs, a whole lot. I was in a hole for the entire summer holidays, and then went to. Actually, what happened was I remember putting the site live and was like, gonna be rich. It's like no sales,
nobody comes.
I was like, marketing,
big
component that I'd missed here. So then I was burnt out. So actually, I don't believe in burnout. I was tired. So then I was like, right, I need to refresh, clear my head, figure out the next steps to get this site moving. I was like, bought Google AdWords for Dummies. This was back when Google AdWords was new.
Yeah, it must have been super.
It was super new, man. So I went out, read the book, and I was good at reading books back then. I think I'd struggle to do that now because I learned differently. Came back and started running a Google AdWords campaign. ching, ching, ching. It was so cheap.
Yeah.
No one else was doing it. Okay, that started blowing. You know, I was doing quite quickly the equivalent of 6 figures a year revenue on a website when I was 17, 18 years old.
It's incredible. I mean, first up, the work ethic of a 16-year-old. You know, anybody that's got a 16-year-old in their household, it's difficult to get them to load the dishwasher, never mind spend a whole summer working on a project. But, you know, it's the fact that you found something that you resonated with, that you found a passion in, and then it doesn't feel like work, right?
It's not work. And also I saw the potential. When I think people don't put the work in because they don't see what the opportunity could arise, or they don't really believe in themselves. I was so motivated. Did I fucking enjoy banging in product details all summer holidays while my mates were out having fun? Like, it was that transition period where everyone was trying to say goodbye to each other from secondary school before they went off to different colleges. Yeah. I missed out on that. I saw a bigger solution because I knew what I was capable of if I did this.
Yeah.
This e-commerce thing got it right. And then obviously that took off in a big way. I remember I had bought an Audi TT at, don't take the piss, bought an Audi TT at college. I had the brand new iPhone that came out. I had like, money coming in. It was like, you know, it was good.
Your peers must have noticed that.
Oh yeah,
right? It must have been like, what?
Well, I was every break that I had at college, I was on my laptop.
Yeah,
I was working on the business, and people that wasn't normal. I'd be up in the canteen tucked in the corner, taking business calls, sorting out stock, making sure the wholesalers were sorting out the deliveries, trying to organise credit accounts with suppliers who were like, who the fuck is this kid? He's younger than my kid, like come and ask me for a 60 grand credit limit on a 90-day term.
I mean, that's incredible. But, you know, the interesting point about that is you are simultaneously going through the standard education system and higher education system, university, plus also doing this massive whirlwind apprenticeship in business. So you've seen both sides of it live, hand in hand. And we talk a lot about that in the standard education system and how it kind of fails a lot of people because it's not teaching financial education. It's not teaching you how to structure your life in a way that's going to be fulfilling. And it leaves huge gaps for people going into the workforce because ultimately that's what they need. They need people in the system driving the economy on minimum wage and, you know, not doing much with their life and their wealth. But you've seen both hands of the standard education and this. Where does the value lie for you with that? You know, because obviously you were still going through and putting all the work in on that university education whilst at the same time building this business and seeing the money come in. A lot of people, including some of the most famous names in the world, would have dropped out of university and left, right? There must be some
second year I nearly dropped out.
Yeah.
It was I was earning good money, and I knew that it felt like it was a chain around my neck.
Yeah.
In that it was stopping me because I obviously had obligations. It was social pressures, all this kind of stuff, and I was trying to build. I still had the web design company at the time, and I was still building my lighting online retailer. And second year I nearly dropped out. I had a bad breakup with a girlfriend in the first semester of my second year, and I bombed in my grades because I didn't revise. I was out doing too much partying, and I thought, you know what, this is just a joke. What am I doing? But I'm not a quitter. I'm a little bit of, if I'm started something, I'm
you got to see it through.
I've got to see it through. And I thought, I can do both. I'm just being lazy if I don't try and do both. I have the ability to do both because my work ethic is good enough. And I also wanted to sit here in the future and say, okay, if at least I write university or academia off, I've fucking gone through it before I start criticizing it, because so many people bash academia and haven't actually done it. So it's a very valid question, a very good point. The value that university brings, which people don't understand, is that there's very few, I can't think of any really, other opportunities where a set of peers have no responsibilities outside of, obviously I did, but outside of themselves.
Yep.
All at the same age, all with similar desires and wants in life, which brings a really unique community of people and which actually teaches you quite a lot in terms of socializing and growing. Now, there's two things I always advise people to do, because I say don't completely write academia for university. It's a complete waste of time unless you need to go to one of the core subjects like medicine, engineering, law.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's a complete waste of time in the 21st century, in my opinion. But it does bring with it tremendous amount of social skill increase and the ability to navigate a situation where you don't have parental support, you're a bit more independent. It's a gateway to growing up, which I think is super important. That if we take that out entirely, it'll be a problem as well.
Yeah.
But you should be paying university fees and academic fees for that experience. So 2 things you can do. 1, you can get involved in a mentorship or a community of people that are similarly minded, that gives you the academia and still brings that support, but you're learning something that's in line with what century. I know Limitless does that. I know Rude does that, and that's a big part of what we promote as the network. It brings a social aspect.
Yeah, 100%.
The other element, if you want to do it, is if you want to continue to learn on your own path, I would advise, if you're a young kid, 18 to early 20s, and you want to go to university for the social side, continue to pursue your side hustle, even if that's working for another company or building your own business, but go and live in a university community, or actually try and get in with halls with people that are going to university. You just don't have to turn up to the lectures.
Yeah.
Right? So you can still do your own thing, but you're around the network. Yeah. So you can still get the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would advise.
Yeah, 100. I mean, that sounds like really sage advice. Yeah, I mean, I've spoke a lot about my kind of views on university and higher education, and, you know, I really don't disagree with you. You know, I think that there are inherently some benefits of doing it. Mm-hmm. But for me, the true education didn't come until I was out of university.
Where do you think personally that the education system started failing?
I'd say from the start. You know, I don't think, okay, there's not much happening in the early years of primary school, but, you know, I think they need to be teaching financial literacy, the basics of understanding what money is and how it works from an early age. You know, I mean, I certainly plan to do that when my kids are a bit young at the moment, but, you know, it shocks me that people can go through that full education system and come out the other end, and they don't have the skills for the 2 most fundamental things in life that will make you or define the happiness in your life. So your ability to manage money, and money isn't everything. It doesn't make you happy, but, you know, having a serious lack of it can be a major issue. And the other one is having the first clue about how to pick someone who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Because if you don't get that right, you're going to have a fucking miserable life. Speaking as someone who's gone through divorce, you know, learning the skills of how to pick the right relationship is massively important, and you're just left to it, you know. And I understand why those things are not important to the government and how it feeds the economy and the system, and, you know, but for me, it's something that you need to get educated on sooner or later. I mean, I went through accountancy and finance at university. I then went to work in finance for a big oil and gas company, and I got to my late 20s and I still didn't have the first fucking clue about managing my own money, managing my own wealth, and, you know, even understanding truly that there was this option of entrepreneurship. You know, it was, you know, similar working class background, but zero entrepreneurship going on around me. You know, everybody had a job. You know, my parents were much more conservative, and they were like, you know, you need to go to university, you need to get a good job. Good jobs were either accountants, lawyers, or doctors. My grades weren't good enough for lawyers or doctors, so I was an accountant. I went and became a chartered accountant. It was just the path that was put in front of me, you know. And it took us till the early 30s to get on board with entrepreneurship, the mindset shift that we can take control of our own life and, you know, start to build our own business rather than someone else's. You know,
I mean, we have to lead by example. So I deploy a tremendous amount of empathy for people that are in that position, because it's not necessarily their fault. Everything is your fault, but the system is set up in a way that doesn't become a real option, and it's not even known. So what you have to remember is, the reason I asked you about when you thought education failed, I think education probably has failed in the last, I would say 30 to 40 years properly, because before, our parents' generation, and possibly the generation before that, post-Second World War, there was a period where when you did actually go through academia and you got a degree, there was a correlation between your wage increase and career benefits that were profound. There was actually a direct correlation. Whether or not it was from the education itself, it didn't matter. The fact that you had a degree and went and did traditional or the standard route
massively
really helped, right? So in that system, you were getting value from the money and the time you were investing. So there is a less of a failure there. Granted, the subjects maybe not great, but you actually doing it regardless of the reason actually helped to benefit you. Now, the advice that we're getting from generations above us were the people that experienced that. So it's unfair to say to a lot of people that don't necessarily get it, because they've had pressures from people that now don't understand how it works now.
Yeah.
It's broken now, and they didn't live through that. They had a very different experience. They got great pensions. They bought houses cheap. They benefited from the economy absolutely flourishing. They listened to the government and were rewarded unbelievably so for it. So we're in a really weird time right now, you and I especially, where we've had our older generations had a completely different experience of the government and the system than we're going to have, and ultimately the generations after us are going to have, which is going to be guys like us now having to educate people like, that's not the case anymore. Yeah. This isn't how it is. And it's a wake-up call. And
that's not something, it's not something that I'd look back and say to my parents, you shouldn't have pushed me this or that. I'm very appreciative of what they did for me. But as you say, in their generation, there was no way they could ever afford to go to university. It wasn't an option for them. My mum was like one of 7, and my dad was one of 4. And, they didn't come from the sort of background where university was an option. So understandably, they wanted that for their children, So you get where they're coming from, but it's about understanding the right approach for the time now. And actually, it's very difficult to understand what the right approach is for our time now, given that there is another world massive shift coming with artificial intelligence. And, we spoke about it in a previous podcast of this point of singularity where AI becomes self-aware, and various different views over what way that could go. But the fact is, in the not too distant future, there is a singularity coming where the way the world is will massively change. And, it's within my children's generation, they're like 3 and 1. So by the time they're an adult, the world could be a completely different place.
The world will be a different place, but what can you do? You can wake the fuck up.
Yeah. Well, it's another point that I was going to talk about, actually, because, I was in Marbella at the Entrepreneur Summit that you guys put on, the Hybrid Entrepreneur Summit. Really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed your chat. Your talk was on artificial intelligence. And, it makes a lot of sense to me that you were talking about that, because, we are chatting about it every single day just now, and within the framework of your business, it's impacting it now. It's already heavily underway with, I know you've got an outsourcing business, you've got marketing agency, you've got Limitless, obviously, with the entrepreneur mentorship. That huge effects in artificial intelligence. We talk about, the singularity and this. You've got the doom mongers that say, the world's going to fall in flames to artificial intelligence. But the more pragmatic people are saying, right, it's here. What are we going to do with it in the short term to make sure that we don't fall behind? And it's exactly the approach you took with the internet at the start, and looking at the opportunity there of, you need to get on board, and you need to get on board quickly. So that's why I really appreciated your talk on artificial intelligence. But what do you think is the sort of short-term focus and benefit from AI from a business perspective?
AI is a new lever for any business or anyone that is going to give them a huge arbitrage. When I say arbitrage, it's in a period in which there's a huge advantage to be had on you knowing something that someone else doesn't know. And throughout history, if you go back through all history, the internet was a great example. But before that, you had industrialization, you had manufacturing, agriculture was a huge part. When people that jumped on the technologies early absolutely dominated, and we internally talk about it like cyborging yourself. So in a way to think about it is, you're competing against, if you're not using artificial intelligence, people that are effectively cyborgs. They have got so much more output, quality, ability than you do as a mere human without artificial intelligence. It's a new level within a business, which means that we're honestly living through one of the most exciting periods to watch, because artificial intelligence, just as a really basic way of explaining it, let's say that it can increase the output of one person by 1,000x, maybe even 100x. That means a small business of, say, 10 people, 15 people, could have the output of 1,500, right? But focused with one mind, which makes it even more powerful because there's less communication lag, there's less politics and all the other issues that arise. So what we're going to see, and we're going to live through this very soon, is small outfits destroying massive, massive companies, absolutely eating them alive. Their margins are better, their speed at which they can do things are better, everything is faster, incorporating new technologies, the quality will be better.
That's a different world. It really is when you compare it to these big organizations, big machines. It's actually harder for them to adapt to the times.
They can't. They can't. So I say can't. I don't like that word. They're going to struggle more because, like you say, for one, people don't want to be put out of their position, so there'll be a tremendous amount of resistance to incorporating any new technology.
Yeah.
There's always bigger democracies, which means board meetings have to happen, systems have to change. There's so much slow pace with big companies, but before it wasn't a problem because they were so big, the little guys couldn't catch up.
Yeah,
they could move and pivot fast enough, but now speed is very key. But these guys can have huge output, and the margins are so much better because they've got so much less staff, so much less overhead. It's gonna be crazy. So for people that are looking into it, just start studying it. Do basic. I mean, I did a really basic course, for example, that covered all the basic AIs just to get your head around how it could be used. And the fun thing is because it's uncharted territory, your ability to innovate how you can use it could massively make you can make generational wealth. If you just come up with a slightly different angle on how to use it.
Get creative, and the only way to do that is to understand the breadth and depth of what's available out there just now, and there's literally thousands of new tools coming out all the time, so it's a big endeavour to get on board with it, but it's so essential. I listened to Mo Goddard talking recently, and he wrote a book called Scary Smart where he talks about the potential of AI in the future, and he said that yes, long term we don't know. We just don't. There are some inevitables, but long term we don't know. But what we do know is, that there isn't going to be this instant world revelation where AI takes over everybody's job. The next 3 to 5 years is more like one person doing 100 people's job with the use of artificial intelligence, as you say, kind of cyborging an individual. That's coming, and it's a scary place to be if you're one of the guys that is not getting on board with AI, because you're going to be left in the dust.
Absolutely alive. Absolutely alive. And when it comes down to decisions in life, and this is the same applies to people that might have a job that are thinking about going out on their own, or like people that might be on the fence about getting into property or whatever. Look at the opportunity cost of everything, right? You can sit there and be a pessimist and talk about that AI could become a singularity and render humans irrelevant. Fine. Yeah. If I go down that route, I'm 100% going to do nothing and 100% going to fail. The alternative, the only other logical alternative is, okay, what can I do? What's my best case? Even if it doesn't work out, I'm still got some chance of making it work. So I'll go 100% on that. Otherwise, so just go in.
There's no point in stressing out about things you can't control.
No.
I always have that chat with my missus, she's like, why aren't you stressed about this? I'm like, well, if I can't control it, I'm not going to get stressed about it, because that is pointless.
Yep.
But for me, it's like things are going to move super fast. What we see is conversations of people telling themselves, but artificial intelligence is never going to be able to do my job. It's the natural go-to response from people, and it's just so incredibly fucking naive. The capabilities of this thing in the long term are endless. Laurie had said to me a couple of weeks ago, he's like, but everybody's still going to need a roof over their head, so we're good and buy it. I was like, well, how are they going to pay for it if everybody's job has been eradicated by artificial intelligence, or the mass populations? This is another point that Mo Goddard was making, is we're not talking 20, 30 years down the line. We're talking much more short term, where people are going to rapidly be displaced by artificial intelligence, and it's like the government doesn't have a plan. Unless they are massively heavily taxing AI companies in the short term, how are they going to fund all these unemployed people at the other end? And we may say, okay, we go back to manufacturing age, there was a lot of people that were displaced as things got mechanized, and we still figured it out. That becomes more challenging with the depth and breadth of artificial intelligence, because there's no one sector, right?
It's a very, very interesting time in that we have no clue what's going to actually happen.
Yeah.
And there is a huge potential here for people that don't get on it and don't actually make something of themselves now, could potentially find themselves in a position where they can never get on top.
Yeah.
And that's just, to be honest though, that's quite reflective of how it is now. You have the majority of people, working class, that are spoon-fed by the government anyway.
Yeah.
I think what you'll find is there'll just be a bigger percentage of people that get shunted down from the middle to the bottom.
We've never seen a rate of pace of differential than what we're going to see with artificial intelligence, and that's where the gaps are going to get bigger. I mean, we already talk about the wealth gap just now having got massively bigger, in the last 40 years. You know,
COVID,
you just need to look at the pay gap between an average employee and a CEO over the last 40 years, and there was actually a graph that showed it year by year, and you just see it going like this, you know. Those gaps are only going to get bigger as the pace and acceleration of progress does. Scary time, but also massive opportunity, and this is the point. It's like inaction is not gonna is a guaranteed way to fail. So you know, take the action and get involved. So I hadn't expected to go into the AI chat so much, but it just naturally went there. To take a step back, just to finish off your kind of startup story, you created this 7-figure lighting business. I understand that failed at some point. So tell me a little bit about what happened there and what the lessons were. And obviously you moved on from that to build some hugely successful businesses, but there must have been some hard lessons there.
Oh, massively hard lessons, but it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. So I built a very successful lighting business to the point at which we were selling so much and buying from wholesalers in the UK, I decided that I wanted to start getting better prices because we had good buying power.
Yeah.
I flew my ass out to Shenzhen, China, southeast of China, on my own, didn't speak the language, found an apartment, was in hotels for a month to start with to try and, because no one would rent out to a white, they call me Guelo, white devil, got a lot of racism.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, no one spoke English. Locked myself in a room trying to learn Mandarin so I could actually get by. Thought it was going to be easy, hard. Then started visiting factories while I was there. Getting by, I managed to find a driver to take me around. I was like getting trains to the factories and negotiating better lighting deals.
Yeah.
And ended up getting a few good suppliers. Put my first, I think, £250,000 order in. Had them packed up. That was getting made when I was there. Had loads of labels made. Went to all the printing factories. Sorted all that out and flew back. All the stuff arrived. We were doing well. Like, we did really well. I think my margins went from like 30% to 70%. When I did that, it was like, good. Okay, the money's coming now. And we had stock, got a new warehouse. So things were flying. I was in business with someone that was about 12 years older than me. I was still very young at this point. I think it was, when this was going this well, I was about 23.
Yep.
I had a Bentley, 4-bed house, detached house. That was £500,000. I was doing well, just to give people a bit of perspective. Range Rover.
Okay.
I was financially doing really well. And the reason I say this is because the next bit gets really hard. I put too much trust in other people. So I take accountability for everything that happened.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't happen now. So therefore, it was in my control. I was naive and inexperienced, and I allowed too much trust in people around me through naivety and probably the fact that I thought I was younger and took my eye off the ball with certain things. Yeah. Didn't check the bank balances properly, didn't check the accounts properly. And then all of a sudden, I won't go into massive details, but ended up getting stung by the business partner. Money was a hole created. Like the company should have been killing it. Things was being taken out, didn't all add up. And then all of a sudden, orders weren't being fulfilled. I was like, hang on a minute, I'm starting to get some negative reviews coming through because I was monitoring all the digital stuff. I really wasn't paying attention to the financial side, the wholesalers, because that wasn't my bag of tricks. I didn't know, I didn't have the contacts, right? And that was a mistake. And then I was just being given information from business partner that I just took to be true.
Right.
And that obviously is a huge issue because there was nothing set up to quality check or double check anything that he was doing. And obviously when it comes down to the money and purchasing, that's huge. I just put my trust in it.
Massively, yeah.
Then all of a sudden we got so many chargebacks coming through for customers that weren't getting fulfilled that then the payment providers started blocking us. So, like when you have you're selling something online, you have like a merchant that handles the payment transactions, World Pay and all these other things. So they're like a middleman between the bank and your payment provider. And then they started blocking us. And I was like, fucking hell, what's going on? Didn't really realize. Cut long story short, there was money left the company. They weren't buying stock. It wasn't fulfilling orders. And ultimately the company went under. It nearly bankrupted me. I mean, I lost everything. I remember crying in the garden, this is me at 23 thinking fucking my world was over.
To expect to have all those skills at 23 though, I can take people.
Okay, you asked about lessons. Arrogance, one. Believe that I was untouchable. At that point, I hadn't had any failures. I couldn't do anything wrong. Everything I touched turned to gold. I think I was a little bit complacent on that front, bit of arrogant on that front. Believe that I was too good. Trust. trust is great and you need to have it in a business, but with any business you go into, you need to have everything with a plan B, everything written in black and white, everything contracted, and everything double checked, especially when it comes to money. Never take your eye off the money, ever. Big lesson. Check the bank balance. Question everything. Have other people question things for you. Have an accountancy team, and then there's someone else that checks their accountancy.
Yep.
Double check everything. So and these things were so, and I'm so grateful that this happened to me early on, because this was only 7 figures.
Yeah.
I will build 9 figures and plus businesses now in the future. If I hadn't had those lessons, I still had that arrogance and didn't have those double checks. And this happened to me later on when I've got kids, got a wife, I've got hundreds of staff.
Much more serious game.
If I didn't, right? I could have still got to that point without having had those lessons and not putting those checks in place. Imagine that now. The negative impact that wouldn't have just on me, but for everyone. So whenever you get into business, doesn't matter how close you are to that person, always treat it as business, not as with emotion. And that's it's not having a go or that's not a reflection on the person you're in business with. It's just business, because you always have to cover your ass because you never know what's going to crop up.
I mean, it's so difficult to find a partnership arrangement that is going to last the test of time, and you're going to have the right skill dynamics between the two of you at work, or it's a really tough thing to do. I mean, we've been very lucky. Ours happened organically. It wasn't ever something that intended. Laurie and I just started doing a bit of work together, and we realised after a little bit of time, right, we're achieving way more together than we are doing our separate things, so let's just bin all that and do this. And then Connor kind of came in a little bit later with this really nice balance between the two of us. Laurie's quite extreme and out there, and I'm quite analytical and systems orientated and introverted, and Connor's just got this really nice balance between us. But that all happened very organically. If I was out there looking for a joint venture partner or whatever, I can't imagine how difficult it would have been. I talked before about the fact that one of my closest mates wanted to do a property joint venture with me at the start, and I said no. And it's one of the best decisions I've made, because we're so similar. Our values are very similar, our skills are very similar, that there'd be no benefit to it. We'd have just been sat there agreeing with each other all the time, and that's not productive towards building something that's going to last. So yeah, I'd be lucky on that front, but I also understand from being in the process and seeing other people, super difficult to get a business partner that you can trust inherently. Obviously, you do still need to make sure everybody's looked after in the right way. Laurie and I took time last year to do our shareholders agreements and all that. We hadn't done that. Bit of a mistake on our side, but we'd been working closely for a while. But that's all kind of buttoned down now. I'm quite big on systems and processes anyway, so I like that we've got financial reviews monthly. We know where we're at with, particularly the building company, because that's a bit more complicated than all of the other stuff. But it's just about keeping everybody on the same page and having that open, transparent discussion. I feel like I get an instant feel for someone whether or not there's an over self-interest in them.
Yeah. And
we had this very discussion about a member of staff that came in that's not worked out, and I knew from day one there was just just in the door, you could feel the self-interest oozing in the room. And I'm like, that's just never going to work, It's not how I'd want a partner, but definitely, not staff either. There needs to be this sort of collective fit, I think. And that's obviously something that you're very good at, as well as building a team around you and generally with building a really strong network around you. I can see that from the Hybrid Entrepreneur Summit, but also a lot of your content online, that network's been massive for you. So, have you got any tips, tricks, how do you get good at that sort of thing of building a really solid team of people around you that are helping you towards it, and people that are not going to just suck the life out of the room?
Be the person that you want to attract.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah.
Leaders, like, you're running a business, you are the leader. You're the guy that should be, if you're doing it, in my opinion, correctly, in the fucking trenches with your family, as I call them, a family, your teammates, all shoveling fucking mud out of that trench, or as we like to say, we're on a snowplow, steam train,
and
we're all in the front carriage shoveling coal together. you have to set the standard. You have to be the person you want to attract, and it has to seep out from you. What I love about life is that when you take accountability for everything, you can control everything.
Yeah.
And everything's your fault, whether it's good or bad, which is fucking brilliant. And the network that you have around you, whether it be your employees or just your general network in a social environment, all comes from you. So if you are...
Conversely, it'd be a really scary world if you were just a victim of everything, because to have no control over anything would be the worst thing.
You know, we said about game theory earlier.
Yeah.
You can pick and choose which avenue you walk down.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a reason I walk down that one. That's a damn sight better outlook for me, and I can control both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So to build a team that's like, I'm blessed. I'm truly blessed. The people I have around me hasn't come from accident, and it's not through luck. It has come from the fact that I have expressed my vision. And I think if you really want to truly be a good leader and you want to have good people around you, you have to let people know where they're going, and you have to sell them on the ride.
Yeah.
But you have to truly believe it too. So everyone knows where I'm going, what I'm doing, and now it's what we're doing and where we're going, and we're all doing it together, and we're all contributing, and we all input, and it's a brilliant, hard but brilliant journey.
Yeah.
And that has to come from me to start with, and then that seeps through the layers of any organization, like I said, whether that be an actual commercial business or just your social network. There is always a hierarchy, but it shouldn't feel like it.
No.
I think that's the way it works. But quickly to go back to what you were talking about management approaches, there's two different ways of doing this. So your culture of your business is very in line with mine, where you're creating a team environment where everyone's contributing together and you're pulling as one.
Yeah.
Now, the person that came on that was probably self-interest was actually working at the opposite management style, in which you just motivate through bonus-related pay, through self-interest, and there's no real camaraderie, but they'll execute because they're trying to look after themselves. That's great. And that's a really easy system to scale, because if everyone's running on bonuses and commission structures and all they need to do is turn up and do their job, then that will work. And it's probably someone like yourself will find that easy because it's systemizable, it's quantifiable, it's trackable. You know, you just manipulate through incentive structures, through pay, and that's it, done. This one where you're building culture, you're building team, you're building trust, you're building love. All these things within an organization is very difficult because it has to come through emotion. It has to come through care. You actually have to turn up for your team. They have to turn up for you. But the brilliant thing about this is, and this is why this will always beat this one, is that there's a level of discretionary effort that you don't get with this. And what I mean by discretionary effort is in this environment where everyone's performance-related pay, they will do the bare minimum to get the maximum output.
Absolutely.
In this one, everyone will hit the limit of what's required and then carry on going. And if you look at any history, you talked about AI, you talked about the internet, you talked about all these things, they're massive economic shifts. They will affect every single business. One way you've got nobody turning up at the weekend because some shit's hit the fan or some new technologies come in and that needs to be adopted, and you know your competition's fucking destroying you. They don't care. This team, they're it. They're working through the night. They're doing everything they possibly can. They're spending their weekends learning the new stuff, making sure that you're okay. They're phoning you up, making sure that's okay. They're taking a month's deduction of wages. They're not taking it so you can keep the company afloat. They're there. Like, they're supporting you emotionally, physically, financially.
They're on board 100%.
And you know what? Even if they both were making the same amount of money, which one would you rather be in?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It goes without saying that, you know, I've spent time in the corporate world. And that's all it is, you know, and you can see how the system falls down really quickly when things start to go the wrong way, you know.
It's just fucking hard to do the other thing.
Yeah, it is. It is, but, you know, it comes from, as you say, the values of the founder. And if you have those strong values and you see it as a family, then, you know, you're going to attract people to it. And the people that aren't attracted by that are going to leave pretty quickly. And, you know, I'd like to say that we're much more on this side of things than the corporate machine stuff, you know.
100%. Being here and seeing what you're like. I can testify to the fact that you guys are a great family. You care about your clients, everything that you guys are doing. That's why I ultimately wanted to work with you guys, because I saw and that's why we're here. I said it to Connie yesterday in the nicest way possible. You know, we have people that we work with and we see like that they have similar core values to us, and that's why we make the effort to come and meet you. And like we've been amazed at just how well you guys have done, how well you guys are gonna do, and there's a very bright future for for you?
It's a big thing for us, as well, to be within a network of successful entrepreneurs that are doing great things and that are really trying to, move things forward. Because, as I say, where are we just now? We're in Grangemouth, industrial town in the middle of Scotland between Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're not even in a major city. We're not in Silicon Valley here. We're not surrounded by a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs and people doing really game-changing things. And for us, we need to reach out to find those networks and groups. And, that's where it really hits home with Limitless and what you guys are doing, because, a network is just so incredibly important, and trying to get those discussions with the right people where, it's going to help move your business forward exponentially. And maybe there's other areas where you can help them. And, it's just, it feeds the whole thing, and we've been struggling with that till now. Things are starting to change in the last year, thankfully, but network's been sort of a big focus for us over the last little while,
I mean, you can orchestrate a good network by physically going out and finding it. But once again, if you take the accountability onto yourself, I learned a big lesson. Quickly tell a story. But my wife was finishing her medical degree, and we lived in Stoke-on-Trent for 4 years. Anyone that lives in Stoke-on-Trent knows what it's like. It's not the most salubrious place in the world. It's certainly probably one of the most anti-entrepreneurial places ever. I mean, there's no entrepreneurship, there's no commerce anymore. When all the potteries and everything closed down there, there's huge poverty. And from an entrepreneur's perspective, I was buying up rentals. I still got quite a few up there, HMOs for student lets in Stoke. I was running my companies. I was doing really well, and I was obviously I had a Bentley, and one of them had the rentals that I bought on like a really bad street. Like I was fit out like a sore thumb there. So just put it. The reason I'm making that point is that there was no one there. Yeah. And I started training at a gym called Strength Asylum, which is a well-known gym, but there was nobody really coming. Funny enough, a good friend of mine, Jordan Peters, who was a big bodybuilder, had a big network of people, and I helped him build out his subscription-based website. It was an education platform for very serious bodybuilders. Yeah. We were at the real beginning end of like subscription-based platforms and all that kind of stuff. And he invested a lot of money into videographers to come up, and I started training with him at the gym. Mm-hmm. And Eddie Hall was at the gym at the time as well. Oh, well. Right. So we had this there was a couple of us in there that were relatively well known. Uh-huh. Jordan started pumping out content. Eddie Hall started pumping out content. We were training together. And then all of a sudden, people started to come train with us. Mm-hmm. Right. And these were big names for the fitness industry that started coming, and people started coming to see Eddie Hall. All of a sudden, the gym's packed. People started moving to Stoke. By the time we finished there, I trained with Jordan there for about a year. This gym was fucking it was heaving with people in that industry. We became the magnet. Mm-hmm. You could do the same thing here. You put out enough stuff, and people want to come to you because you're setting the standard. People want to be around you. Like I said, be the person you want to attract.
Yeah, and it's about accountability, and it's important to say, there's never any excuses here. We're always saying, right, this is what it is, and here's the action we're going to take to rectify it. And that's what we've been working on over the last year. But we're building our own network. That's been a fundamental change in our business in the last 6 months, as we realised we need to stop transactionally training people on a monthly cycle and start building a network and retaining clients, and that changed the game for us. And it's obvious now, but you don't know what you don't know. And until we made that change, it genuinely did change the game. But just one small change to how the same product is provided and supported has massively changed our business. So networking has just been huge there. You briefly mentioned the HMOs, the properties in Stoke. I can see you've got properties, marketing agency, outsourcing, aesthetics business with your wife as well, I read. And then Limitless. There's a lot of diversity going on there. I take it that's intentional, and if so, what is the value? Was that learning from the failure of your one big lighting business early on, that you said, okay, well, I need to have fingers in a few different pies, and what's the intention behind the diversity, and also how do you manage it? There must be a lot of ball spinning or plate spinning.
So to be honest with you, I fucking love business. Yeah. So I am a bit of a shiny object freak. Like when a new business opportunity comes up, I found it very difficult to say no. Yeah. And I'd probably have taken on more than I should have done to be optimal. However, when you truly love something in life, it's like, if you love certain foods, do you really want to be walking around at 3% body fat, or you actually enjoy yourself a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, I'm the same with business. I realize that if I really love something, even if it's not necessarily optimal in terms of the money output, it's not about the money. You know, I can still be very wealthy. And the framework that I like to look at is like, when you get to like retirement age, what decision would you have made? You can have a chat with yourself at that age.
Yeah.
Would you have, speaking to that person, made the decision to be optimal, or be happy but still do well? Like, even if it wasn't quite as much. And 9 times out of 10, your retired self would say, look, you should have just had a bit more fun. Like,
those little mindset, I call them little mindset hacks, really fucking valuable. You know, you kind of mentioned that in passing there, but, you know, there was one from Peter Attea recently about the kids are running about mental destroying the place, toddlers, and he said, just try and flip your mindset and say, look, you know, imagine 80-year-old you, and this is the only time that you get to come back and spend the day with your kids and see them at this age again, and just bring yourself to more presence and more gratitude. And, you know, those things are massively powerful, because too many of us get lost in the day-to-day, right?
And I think that's so important. So for me, I optimize for growth, but also happiness. There's a caveat, there's a constraint to my growth. It's like, I have to enjoy the journey. Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything is easy. It just means I enjoy it. And yes, because of that, I probably took on more businesses than possibly I should have done. And it's taken me a long time to get them to a point where I've delegated a lot of it out, that I don't have to focus on it. Yeah. The main goal now is Limitless. The Limitless community and what we're building is going to have so much impact that, for me, money is no longer really, it's still a motivator, but not as big as it was. That was the motivator. For me, I want to create something special. And there's a whole healthcare element being incorporated to Limitless. So I can and will help hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people become financially freer and healthier, and live longer and happier. Yeah. That's my impact, and that's my goal. So focus has now become everything. I've attached myself to it, and I want to do that for the rest of my life.
I mean, Limitless is incredible insofar as there's a real variety of businesses that you can support and grow, right? And that's the thing that immediately struck me, is you have the opportunity to have impact over multiple sectors and you know, really make a difference to people.
So that satisfies my shiny object syndrome. Yeah. So I get to work with all these different industries within one. So it was a clever move, chess move, to unify and become more clear on the end goal, to shoot at one target with still having all of the fun variety incorporated into the one business, which I love. But it stops me trying to shoot at multiple targets at the same time. I'm shooting at one, but it's all united. I'm uniting them all under one umbrella. Yeah, which is fucking brilliant for me. Yeah. It's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm blessed. I'm truly wake up every single day happy.
I mean, there must be something quite exciting about pulling someone's business apart and figuring out the mechanics of it, and then helping them grow it and build it and make it better. I mean, that's a really cool thing to be doing. You know, we were looking at acquisitions and mergers for a little while last year. You know, we focused on it. We bought a home improvement company. Not our best acquisition, but our first time at that sort of thing. But I love getting into the detail of a business, figuring out how they're working, how I'd make it better, where the synergies are, where you can advance it, where you can grow your sales, synergies with our own business, and you know how you could slash overhead, and you know, I love that sort of stuff. So I can imagine that's quite an exciting part of having these diverse customers that you can get.
I mean, if you love business, then it's the best thing in the world. Yeah, I get to deal with loads of businesses, and not only that, I get to help people make a shitload of money from their businesses, and I make money from that. Yeah, I'm like, what, did I win the lottery? Like, for me, that's like, I can't think of anything better to do. That for me is like what I enjoy, and that's what I push to. That's not for everyone. No. So figure out your thing, and I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
No, and it's incredible, and obviously we are involved with Limitless University, and you know, so far it's been really great for us, and the networking part of it has been a big deal as well. Really excited to see, you know, what you guys achieve with that going forward, and you know, it's quite congruent with a lot of what we were trying to do on the property side of things, you know, and build a community and helping people grow. And you have this transition of, like, up until a point your life was all focused on getting achievement from what you've done, but when it switches to having this massive sense of achievement from what you've helped someone else achieve in their life, you know, it can almost be more fulfilling. It's a really weird sensation.
However, there's some lessons in life, as you know, we're both in the education space. We both, you know, help people understand things but more. We try and teach people things. There's some lessons in life you can't teach. And one of those typically is money isn't everything, and actually helping more people is more fulfilling and more value giving than not. But you have to go and get rich, be successful, learn that mistake yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a mistake. I think it's a rite of passage to get to the point where, okay, I've got all the materialistic stuff, I've got the financial security, but more of it's not making me any marginally happier. So now actually when I help other people, I'm getting way more out of it. But you have to walk that path, I think, yourself.
You do know nobody's going to realise that, you know, when you get a Lambo or a Porsche or whatever the nice shiny car is, that after a few months it's going to be a car that you get in every day and go work in, and you know it's short-term fulfillment. And understand, and most people don't take the time to even understand the things that would make them happy in life, because they're just driven by this day-to-day need to go work, you know, getting a little dopamine hits here, there from watching a bit of TV or on social media. They don't ever take the time out to say, this is a life I've designed. I can design whatever life I want to design for myself. Okay, I'm going to have to go out there and work fucking hard for it, but, you know, I can change the game. But most people don't even know what that different game would be, or what that thing that would get them out of bed excited for every single day, because they're so lost in the monotony of day to day that they never get that, you know?
The first trick is to actually realise that they are an NPC. And when I say NPC, it's a non-player character, someone is in the system that's not even aware that they're not happy.
Yeah,
that's the problem. They haven't introspectively thought, gone, am I actually on a path that, am I miserable? If so, why?
Yeah,
like that doesn't even enter their heads, because when those questions start to arise, you then what I class as a seeker. You suddenly realise that you're in this game, in this system, but you're not a player.
Yes.
And then you're seeking a way to become one. And that's where you start seeking out networks and people like us that can actually help you get out over that. But it starts with realizing that there is actually a game to be played here. Yeah. And right now you're not playing it.
It's you know, that's why the whole Matrix analogy is used so much, because it's so incredibly accurate, you know, isn't it? It's like getting a child waking up to the reality of what's going on about you, and most people are asleep, you know.
And it really, really pains me. It makes me so sad, because I wish everyone could experience what you and I get to experience on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time. Yeah. I could literally, there's so many other thoughts I had on conversation, but this has been a really good chat, Elliot. I always finish the podcast with this same question of what does real wealth mean to you?
Real wealth is the ability to create change and impact for the net good. So I think once you get to a point of self-fulfillment, you then have the ability, because people talk about opportunities, they talk about freedom, what they can purchase with it. For me, wealth is the ability to give wealth.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what I'm striving for, to become wealthy enough in power, influence, money, to be able to impact the world in a really powerful way.
Yeah.
Because that's real wealth. Mm-hmm. That's real wealth.
It's so funny, the journey that you see time and time again play out with people that go on this wealth trip of, you know, starting off looking for the shiny things, realizing quite quickly that's not going to fulfill them, you know, building purpose usually around the business and a drive and something that you really care about, but, you know, creating wealth inadvertently through finding something you're passionate about, building it, and then getting to a point where that business is at a stage and maybe taking a step away and then looking more altruistically at what you can do for the world. And, you know, that route plays out time and time again, because, you know, ultimately we're human beings, we're programmed. There's a design in there, and that, you know, it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs with altruism coming at the end of it. It's getting yourself to a point where, you know, you've ticked off all this other stuff, and you can say, right, how am I really going to help people in the world?
The holy grail to being really, truly rich and successful is to really give a fuck about other people.
Yeah.
I will be a billionaire, promise you that. I'll say on this podcast right now.
Yeah.
And it will be through helping an inordinate amount of people.
Yeah. Well, the more people you can help, the more.
And with that money, I could do more help. But the shift in focus from ourselves to others is what makes you truly rich. If you want to be truly, truly rich, stop looking at yourself. Look at others, and it will come. But you got to have the vehicle to do it. I'm blessed that I've done this, and I've gone through a lot of lessons at an early age. I'm 32 now.
Yeah.
Not long 32. And I'm in a position now where I know I've got another 50, 60 years. I can keep going at this with this mindset already. And I think, fucking hell, we're moving now, which is exciting as hell.
Absolutely.
And I'm bringing other people, younger people, on this journey with me, so I know that they can take over should they want later down the line. So this is going to be an ongoing impact.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. And it's going to be incredible to see it. You know, we've got a journey ahead of ourselves. 5 years in, I kind of feel like we're just moving now.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's starting to get exciting now. And let's just hope with artificial intelligence and everything that's going to come, things are going to move very quickly. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see where we go. Elliot, thanks a million. If anybody is looking to reach out to you, check out more about Limitless University. I'll put the link in the show notes anyway. But you know, do you want to see where follow you?
If you want to find me on Instagram or YouTube, just put Elliot Wise in. I'll come up. So just put my name in anywhere.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson, and thanks for joining us on this wealth journey.